On today's show, the Cleveland Cavaliers are 44-10 at the All-Star break. That means now is as good a time as any to take a look back at the first 54 games of the season. I did that with Matt Fontana. We talk about the 15-game winning streak and so much more on this Tuesday edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name is Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like 92.3 The Fan, and my Substack, The Inside Shot, Cleveland Magazine, and a number of other stops along the way. I want to say thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching the show on YouTube, do me a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. A proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Obviously, the first half of the season went better than anyone could have imagined for the Cleveland Cavaliers, which means there was a ton of stuff to like about the first 54 games that this team has played. Brought in Matt Fontana from ESPN Radio. Maybe you know him from when he and I used to do a radio show together every single day back in the day, but we talked about a bunch that we liked from the first half of the season. So without anything else from me, here's what he and I talked about for the first half of the season for the Cleveland Cavaliers. And back again here on Lock On Cavs is Matt Fontana, a friend of mine, of course, and a host over at ESPN Radio. Does a lot of things locally in Cleveland. You might know him from when he and I used to host a radio show every single day, once upon a time, but brought him in to talk about our favorite things from the first quote-unquote half of the season for the Cleveland Cavaliers, because Yasser Rick is here, and they've actually played 54 games, so we are well past the halfway mark, but we each put together three of our favorite things from the pre-All-Star break portion of the season. We're going to talk about that. And, I will spend some time tomorrow with Spencer Davies looking ahead to what is yet to come this season, what we're looking for. But I do want to take this opportunity to sort of look back at what we have seen so far. So, Matt, you and I both put together a list of three things. You are the guest of honor. Give me thing number one that you are most happy about, or your favorite thing from the first half of the season.
I probably will steal this from you. It'll probably be on your list as well, but it has to be Evan Mobley. It's got to be the best thing about
that
the Cavs.
That was on my list.
It's on your list. It should be on everybody's list. It's the best thing about the Cavs right now. Like, I have, some individual things, or like I had an individual game. We'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, the best thing about the Cavs has been Evan Mobley. And I guess, I don't want to steal another one of yours, but I think there's an offshoot of Kenny Atkinson that goes.
Maybe there is.
Yeah, we'll find out in a second. But yeah, I think where we all think the Cavs might be able to go, where we think not where we think, but what we think this team is best at, right? Like, when you look at the construction of this team, which we've talked about here on Locked On before, a lot of people have talked about before, they're doing it a little bit differently, which is funny because now how many teams do you hear saying we need to start doing more what the Cavs are doing, or we need to find a way to stop that team, which is just funny. But yeah, they built it this way. And as far as Evan Mobley is going to take them is how far they're going to go. You know what you're going to get out of Donovan Mitchell on any given night. I think honorable mention has got to be the return of Darius Garland, getting healthy, all that kind of stuff as well. But really, he's the X factor. Talking about Evan Mobley, he's the guy that could take this from an Eastern Conference Finals team to an NBA championship type of team if he can continue on the track that he is. He's so young. He's so early into his career. But to see that jump, and I don't want to say for you, Danny, but I think, someone can certainly talk about here is how fast this has gone on him getting this outside shot and the confidence that he has. And we heard so much from people saying that there was this plan, right, that they put into Evan to say in the offseason, this is what we want out of you, or this is exactly what the player that we're trying to get you to be. And to actually see that come out, and literally 2 months into the season, you saw it already. You knew what he was, and he was slowed down, with the injury a little bit, but I think just not even the level that he got to, but frankly, how fast he got there in just one off season with Kenny Atkinson. And now, now that we're halfway through, but even just a couple of months into the season, seeing it, like, it's got to be Evan Mobley. It's been so impressive.
Right. I agree. And I think that some of the interesting things about Mobley are one, that the 3-point volume has gone up, which is what a lot of people really wanted to see from Evan this year. It was not necessarily about what can he do around the rim, because he's always been good near the basket. It was more about how can he make it work with Jarrett Allen. And a big part of that has to be Evan, taking those steps beyond the 3-point line and making shots from out there. He's done that at a really impressive clip now since that calf injury that cost him a couple of weeks in late January. He hasn't been the same 3-point shooter, but I do think he'll get back to form as far as that goes in the near future. I just think that's kind of the last thing to come back when you've got one of these lower body injuries, the way that he was dealing with that calf strain. So I think that there's a lot to like there. I think the aggressiveness too from him, because we talk so much about the 3-point shot, and for good reason. But from the jump this year, that wasn't the thing. Like, he didn't come out this year bombing away from 3 night one. The difference about him from the start this year is that he was so much more aggressive in looking for his own shot, putting the ball on the floor and attacking the basket. He just had a different mindset, I think, offensively than what we had ever seen. I think he deserves a lot of credit for the work he put in the summer, but I think Kenny Atkinson deserves a lot of credit too for putting him in those positions and helping him kind of realize, and truthfully too, I think for somebody to get to where he's gotten to, Donovan Mitchell deserves credit for it, because Donovan has taken a step back. And I also think that to kind of get over the hump, at a certain point, you need to feel relied upon. And I think early in the season, Evan Mobley felt like the Cavs needed him to be that. And that's a big reason why he's been able to play as well as he has been.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think you also, the game didn't have to take away from what he wants to do on the defensive side, because you think so much, okay, he's going to put all this effort on this focus on shooting on the threes, but then, okay, he's lost his touch around the rim, or his post footwork isn't as good anymore. No, like, I think the two biggest things for me is, number one, the ball handling, the amount of frequency that he is bringing the ball up the court with a little bit of confidence. It's not like it's every set, but, from a guy that never did it to doing it, maybe 3-4 times a game, like that's a big increase. So I think the ball handling has been great, but he's been able to maintain that defensive presence, maintain that post presence, while adding all of it. And it's like, just, as we know, it's like, just now that he's added that layer, it's just now can just keep stacking. He's just going to keep getting better with it. I'm glad they signed him to the contract that they did, because, I really think he might take off here over the next couple of years. And I mean, eventually that money's going to come due and they'll pay it. But I really hope that he keeps growing here. And again, I think really has the potential to be a top 5 player in the NBA.
Right. Well, I mean, it does matter, Matt, too. This is the thing we haven't thought about, because the Cavs are going to be very expensive no matter what in the very near future. But they also are, if Evan Mobley makes an All-NBA team, which I think as of now, he's on track to do. Now he has to go out and finish the rest of the season, but he's on track to do that as of right now. If he does that, that contract is going to get boosted up to be more expensive, and the Cavs are going to have to pay more money. And I don't have any reason to believe they're not going to pay that money. Like, they've not been under any sort of financial crunch. I've been told that the move for DeAndre Hunter, the fact that they got under the salary tax line, was an added bonus. Like, there was no mandate from ownership to say, hey, you guys cannot be in the tax. They're more than willing to be a very, very expensive team. And Evan Mobley is going to be worth being that type of player, because the other part of this, and there's the quote that Donovan Mitchell keeps saying in the locker room that I keep coming back to with Evan. And he keeps saying that this is the worst Evan Mobley is going to be, that he's going to continue along this upward trajectory. And Matt, I don't know where you're at there, but I really do believe that.
I agree. And there were some times that, this was, back again when we were doing this every day, but there would be people that would be critical. And they'd be like, oh, man, we wasted this. And you and I will both sit there and be like, no, just stop. Like, this guy, he's so young. He's got the physical skills that you're looking for. And he just needs that time to develop. And I know the microwave society that we live in. But you and I would hear those people and we'd just be like, no, stop it. So the fact that he's doing this at this point, quieting down a lot of those people, but he's still 22 years old, So, I mean, it's like he's got plenty of time to keep growing. So it's exciting. And I think, again, when you think about him just layering all these different skills together, it's like, you don't want to say Jokic, because that guy is...
No, that guy's special. He's one of one.
He's a generational type of guy. And there might not ever be a player like that. But with Mobley, that size, if he can now shoot it that way, I really I know the Cavs love calling him the unicorn, right? That's what they love calling Evan Mobley. But yeah, he could be an offshoot of that, a little bit different, his own kind of brand of a player, and that's exciting. And at the end of the day, what is that? It's a really hard guy to defend, and that's a really hard guy to game plan for, and that's just something in the back pocket of Kenny Atkinson and the Cavs, which is, again, you just can't buy that.
I mean, the name I've heard from other teams about who Evan Mobley can become is the next Anthony Davis. Like, that is the type of player that they view him as potentially being able to be if he does, in fact, continue along the development that he's gone. And I think he's a really good piece of evidence too that development is not always a linear thing in the NBA. And had he stayed healthy last year, I don't know what he would have been. I mean, I think we kind of all forget that he missed 6 weeks last season because he had knee surgery, and then he missed another few weeks because he had a pretty nasty ankle injury in the second half of the season. So last year, I don't want to say it was a lost season because it wasn't, but he also didn't get the most out of that season. And what would he look like at the end of last year if he didn't get hurt? What would he look like now if he didn't get hurt? Like, we will never know those answers, but I think he's a really good case of development's not always linear. Like, guys are going to develop at different rates throughout their career. It doesn't mean that they're not going to hit their ceiling, but I certainly think Evan Mobley is on his way to hitting his ceiling. Well, that was number one for both of us. I don't know if you ranked yours. I didn't rank mine, but that was certainly one of the ones that I had on my list. So we will get to the rest of, or at least the next, maybe this one will cross over to next right here on Locked On Cavs. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now, Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you get the money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now, this is Taxes. Get an expert now on turbotax.com. That is turbotax.com, turbotax.com. Thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. All right. Well, since you stole one of mine, I'm going to go next. I'm going to be selfish instead of giving you the first pick again. I'm going to say the Cavs going for it, right, with the trade for DeAndre Hunter, because I do think, Matt, that before the trade for Hunter, this Cavs team was one that I thought was capable of winning the title, but they also had what I thought was a very clear weak spot on the wing. I like Caris LeVert a lot. I think you and I are two people who are probably a little bit higher on Caris LeVert as a basketball player than consensus is. I liked him a lot, but he also wasn't the ideal small forward next to the rest of the starting lineup. I think Max Strus is really good. I just don't know that he's the ideal small forward for that spot either. The fact that the Cavs had the best record in the Eastern Conference at the time of the trade, and at the time you're listening to this, they still have the best record in the Eastern Conference, obviously. But the fact that they were the team with the best record in the East, a team that is one of, Matt, the 15 best teams in the regular season of all time by net rating. Like, this is a historically good team. And Kobe Altman and the rest of that front office and Kenny Atkinson and the coaching staff still said, you know what, no, we can still get better. We can still go for this. We can still improve our chances of winning the title this year. I find that stuff to be really admirable, because I think it's really the easy way out to say we're really, really good. Maybe we do have some weaknesses, but we're good enough that we have a legitimate chance to win the title. And that would have been true for them. It's really easy to make that decision instead of making the difficult decision of parting with two guys who have been around, who are beloved in the locker room, and going to make an upgrade. And I think Kobe Altman, and I think the rest of that staff deserves a ton of credit for that move happening.
Yeah, and it's also funny that it's been 3 years, basically every trade deadline, it's been the Cavs and DeAndre Hunter, and they're going to get DeAndre. Like, he's just been kind of this name that keeps getting floated around, and I think they waited for the right year to go get him. because it's perfect for what they needed, right? Like, and there were
He's
so many people that
everything
said
they
this
needed,
tweet,
man.
and I thought about this too, and they were like, is this the first time, like, since LeBron that they've had, like, a bona fide true wing guy in the NBA? And I was like, oh my gosh, like, probably, and they've put other pieces in there and all that kind of stuff, sure, but, like, this was exactly and perfectly what they needed. Then when you talk in what you had to give up, which again, it's like you and I, again, big Karis LeVert fans, and we should have kind of known with Niang when you were looking at the contracts, there was like 2 of the 3 guys that might have to go, and maybe it would have been Strus fine with Niang. Like, that's all. It's never easy, but it was perfect. Like, DeAndre Hunter is almost exactly what this team needs. You have 2 centers that can play, you have 2 guards that can play, and now you put a true 3-and-D guy out there at the wing. If they move him to the starting lineup, I really was like, no, keep him on the bench. Now it's only been 1 game, and I was like, kind of like him in the starting lineup maybe.
So do you think he should be the full-time starter?
I'm kind of thinking that. I mean, it's hard because in reality, and I know you know this too, it's like, yeah, that's like an honor thing. It's an important who's out there with 4:20 to go in the game and you're up by 2, like that. Those are the crunch minutes. But then it always comes back to, like, and even again, that game the other night, he got in foul trouble really quick against the Timberwolves. Then they had to pull him back out when you put him back in. I really think the better thing to do is to start Strus and let DeAndre Hunter keep coming off the bench. I just don't know if that's what I want. It's hard because, like, you just traded for him. I'm really excited that he's here. I kind of want to see him start. I don't know how you feel about it.
I think he's the perfect starter for that group.
Yeah.
And I think that part of the reason why, and it's easy to look at what he was doing in Atlanta, where he was scoring almost 20 points a game, where he had only, I believe, started 4 games this season before the trade. As a member of the Hawks, he only started 4 games, and he played in like 40-something. But I think that what the Hawks needed him to do is so much different than what the Cavs need him to do. Like, they needed him to be offense off the bench because their bench not very good. Obviously, the Hawks are a very, very average team, but the Cavs don't have that same scoring need off the bench because one of Darius Garland or Donovan Mitchell is going to be out there with any bench unit. Evan Mobley or Jarrett Allen going to be out there with any bench unit. You've got Ty Jerome. You've got Sam Merrill as instant offense when he's got it going on off the bench. If Max Strus is playing bench minutes, he's a great connector. He's able to score. He's able to make shots. Like, I just don't think. Plus, the Hawks offense was so reliant on Trae Young. They're very average at best offense. The Cavs have the best offense maybe by the end of the season in NBA history. Like, that is a possible thing. So I just don't look at it and say, yeah, they need more scoring off the bench from this guy. I think what they need is they need their starting lineup to be better defensively. And that's why I think that him being in that group makes the most sense.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what I said. I'm happy that he's here to get that chemistry down. Because again, I also realize, like, we're going to be in the playoffs before you know it. And I need him comfortable with Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. Like, I don't want to say I don't want him out there wasting minutes like with Craig Porter and with Sam Merrill and stuff like that, but you need these guys to get on the same page quick, and that's where even more of a reason to starting him to get the most minutes that you can with him and Mitchell and Garland and Mobley and all those guys. So, like, yeah, I would love him to start. I think that might be where they're leaning, and like you said, then you just kind of move Strus to the bench. It works out.
So did you have that as one of your 3, or are we moving on?
I didn't. So this one's, you're going to yell at me because you know how I do lists and I always add more when I really shouldn't. But here we go.
Oh, yeah.
So this is like number 2, but
You're
then
a terrible instruction follower.
Yeah, I'm bad. You know that about me. So I'm going to do 2, but it's like I have a little offshoot on it. So my second favorite thing about the Cavs to this point was that West Coast trip that they took. My offshoot is the home game when they just absolutely destroyed the Golden State Warriors. So, like, I'm just going to add them.
Early
I
in the
guess
season.
I'll tell you what, I'll be succinct. Them beating up on the West. How about that? You give me on that? Because that was early enough in the season where, again, they had the great start, and it sucked. They lost to the Celtics, and, they still got out to that. But I got to tell you, Danny, like, when they were going to go on that West Coast trip, to me, that was like okay, this is like the real. And again, I'm not saying the Celtics game wasn't a big test or what they had done to that point didn't have me believing in this team. But when they left to go out west, I was like, I want to see this. I want to see this. It was I maybe believe more in Denver than a lot of people do. Wanted to see them against the Lakers, and they went out there and just dominated. And I know it's hard to look at it now and see the dumpster fire that the Warriors are. But back then, they were playing good basketball. They came here and they smoked them. Like, I'm not going to say that that's going to be like a memory stuck in my head forever. But Danny, I'll never forget, my whole family, Steph's whole family and I, we all went to Great Lakes Brewing Company to have our first Christmas sales for the year. And that was that Friday. We watched in the corner. I look up, I'm like, are we beating them by 40 right now? Like, I'm just never going to forget that, So I'm going to put the West Coast dominance, that West Coast trip, but really that Warriors game was a lot of fun to watch as well.
So the Cavs this season, to your point, Matt, they're 15-3 against teams from the Western Conference. They've swept a bunch of teams, like swept the Warriors, swept the Lakers. Obviously, Los Angeles looks a little bit different now as opposed to when the Cavs played them because they made a trade of significance. They're only 3 losses, one in OKC, which was a really bad night, and then the 2 losses that they took against the Houston Rockets. One was the second out of a back-to-back, and they were by a combined 5 points. So it's not as if, other than that OKC game, they've been either blowing out teams from the West or their losses have been by very close margins. And the one game I think is pretty fluky considering Darius Garland missed 5 free throws, something he's not done at any other game in his entire career. So I do think that that's worth talking about. That West Coast trip is an interesting one to bring up because you look at what they did, and obviously these teams, 3 of the 4 teams they beat look different now than they did when the Cavs played them. But They beat Denver. They scored 149 points. Like, they just absolutely did whatever they wanted offensively against the Denver Nuggets. And Denver's a really good team, and they're playing better basketball now, certainly. They beat Golden State again. They destroyed Golden State twice. Like, they have beaten Golden State in the first game. The final score was closer than the actual game was. They were by 41 at halftime. I think that first half might be the best half of basketball I've ever watched because the Warriors too were, at that point, I think they were 9-1 or 8-1 going into that game. They were a really good team at that point. Beat the Lakers, beat Dallas. Now those 2 teams have totally remade their teams, but the Cavs have looked good basically in every big game against Western Conference teams, except for the second one against OKC. Like, other than that, it's been really good against teams out West. I do have one other thing that I really want to bring up that I want your take on. So we'll do that next right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by Hungry Root. When it comes time to grocery shop and meal prep, you might have this ongoing problem. Maybe you just don't have enough time. Life can get busy. I know it's very busy for me between work, life, trying to eat healthier, which is a really important thing. Obviously, it can lead you to constantly feel stressed out, right? Maybe you go to the grocery store, you buy things that you don't need because you went to the grocery store hungry, which is a giant no-no. And then you end up with no time to actually cook the things that you do buy. And if you want to stick to your health goals, well, good luck, because that can be a struggle too. So everything can change by discovering Hungry Root. It's a game changer, and it's one of the easiest ways to eat healthy without all the stress. With Hungry Root, it's like having a personal shopper and a nutritionist all in one. They take care of the grocery shopping, recommending meals, groceries based on your taste and health goals, from anti-inflammatory to high protein and gluten-free options. Plus, the best part, every meal is ready in 15 minutes or less. Quick, healthy meals that actually taste great, all delivered straight to your door. It's a huge time saver and can make eating healthy so much simpler. So you're going to love Hungry Root. And for a limited time, you can get 40% off your first box and a free item in every box for life. Just go to hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA. That is hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA, code LockedOnNBA, LOCKEDONNBA, to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. Again, that is hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA. Use code LockedOnNBA. Don't miss out. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, if you're watching the show on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. Matt, my third thing that I've got is Darius Garland getting back to being an all-star, potentially all-NBA player, because you look at what he went through last year where he had a nightmare of a season. He had a fractured jaw. There was a death of a family member that I think really affected him. There were a few other nagging injuries that really didn't go away throughout the course of the season, and he never was able to find a rhythm. No matter what he was trying to do, he could never find a rhythm, and ultimately he couldn't overcome all the weight that he lost with the jaw injury, and he didn't look like a very good point guard. His stock was at an all-time low this summer. I was somebody not to brag here, but I was a big believer in the Darius Garland bounce back season happening this year. And I think it's been better than even I could have imagined.
It is. And like, I will fully admit I was down. I was questioning it. Can he come back? And can he be the player like a lot of people? Can you have two undersized guards out there and be efficient offensively and defensively? And he's got his shot back. That was the one thing about Garland. And again, I didn't give full credit to that injury, to the weight loss, to all that, because I was worried that his shot was gone. And guys can find it, certainly, but sometimes they don't. And to see him come back and just have that touch again, and I think we can all go back to that Pistons game when it's like, he just knew as soon as that ball was coming out of his hands that it was going down. Like, that's the kind of stuff, and that's what this team needs. Again, you have three-point shooters in Strus and Merrill and, certainly Donovan. But, like, I think Darius Garland's biggest impact on this team is if he is going to shoot 8 threes a game, which is just, like, absolutely insane, but here we are in the NBA. Like, yeah, to go 4 out of 8, from beyond the arc, like, that's going to be a winning formula for him and for the Cavs. So, like, I'm with you. Like, I was down on Darius. I fully admit it, and I'm so happy that he's back to form and back to shooting. I think that's the best thing for this team. And it's just so hard to watch him, man, because it's like, can he just stop getting hitting in the face? Like, it's
right. It still happens all the time.
All the time. And it's not his fault. He's a shorter guy. I get it. He gets in there. He's so quick. He's got the dribble. He gets that free throw line. He's got that fader now, just kind of getting away from it, getting the shot up. But, man, it just seems like he's got a magnet in his jaw right now. Are they sure they, like, didn't put something? Whatever. Like, he just seems to just catch it every time. I feel bad for him. He's got to be – I'd be pissed off if I was him, so I can only imagine it's even worse.
Right, and to your point about, his shooting stuff and all that's come back. So last year, obviously a very down year for him. He shot 37.1% from three-point range, which is the second lowest mark of his career. Only worse season was his rookie year, which I think is to be expected for a lot of these things. But this year, taking nearly 7 threes per game while also playing a career low in minutes. He's playing 30.3 minutes, which for an all-star, potential all-NBA caliber guard, that's insane that he's only playing 30 minutes and he's been as productive as he has been. Shooting just under 44% from 3. And we are recording this, full disclosure. This is Tuesday night, February 11th, as we're recording this. So maybe he hits 8 threes against the Raptors on Wednesday night in the last game before the All-Star break. And
so you're telling me I should put that in my parlay? God.
I mean, maybe. I can't tell the future. But if you're listening to this, you know what happened.
Oh, I know
if
when
Matt
I
hit on that parlay or not. Yes.
Yeah.
He's up to almost 22 points a game, up to 6.6 assists, while also having a career low in turnovers. Like, all of this stuff, I just think everything that you could have hoped Darius Garland would be this season, I think he's been that and more. And any questions about whether or not he and Donovan Mitchell, the fit can work, I think there are going to be people that are going to hold out to make sure we see it in the postseason. And I get that. But I also think they've done a lot to answer it that, no, this duo is really, really good together.
And especially, like, I'm not going to say these guys are ever going to make an all-NBA team defensively. I mean, all defense team, I should say. Like,
no,
but
they won't.
But that's where what a lot of people would say is you're going to put those guys out there. Okay, they're going to be attacked. Like, and you saw that there were times that, I think the Celtics would do that a lot, where they're like, we're going to do this because we have the height, because we have some really just tall guys, and Peyton Pritchard's so fast and all that. But it's like, okay, you sacrifice that on the defensive side, sure. But if they're going to keep scoring the way they're going to score it, go ahead. We'll get our stops with Mobley or Allen when we can on defense, and then as long as Garland and Allen or Garland and Mitchell are shooting and scoring, then it's still going to come out positive. So I think even just them being on the floor, because that would have been my concern. You have 2 undersized guards out there who aren't great defenders. They give effort, which is great, but to be able to kind of erase that a little bit, and like you said, I think come the playoff times, that's going to be where it's really going to matter a lot.
Do you have one more, or did we burn through all of yours?
No, I had a bunch. Like, I think a couple things to mention. Number one, you're so right on about the minutes, like how low Kenny Atkinson is keeping these minutes, which is great. I'd say the injury word. I know we've had a bug, but it's not anything too serious, which is great. The only one I was thinking about throwing in was Ty Jerome. I think
it's been awesome.
That, like, you and I have talked about this for a long time. Like, I think that backup point guard role is one of the most crucial ones. And when Ricky Rubio had to step away, I was nervous. First, I mean, obviously got hurt, then traded, then came back, and then ended up leaving. But like, I was so nervous. I'm like, who is going to take that role? Now, the Cavs are built differently where they have 2 point guards that start for them every night anyway. And to your point, they can have one of those guys on the floor at any time. But as the season goes on, they've been able to rest Donovan and Darius for different games. One of those guys gets into foul trouble. One of those guys, and I'm not expecting Ty Jerome to ever come in and be an automatic 15 points, but he's getting close to being an automatic double-digit guy when he gets the minutes. And that is such an important role for me, is that backup point guard. And when I watch a lot of championship level basketball teams, I say, who are your guards coming off the bench? Who is your ball handler coming off the bench? Who's the guy running the offense? And I just have liked so much of what Ty Jerome has brought to this team. It's been awesome to see for him.
Right. And I think that, that's part of the reason why, with him being as good as he is, I think that's part of the reason why Karis LeVert was expendable. Because one of the things that they are going to miss about Karis LeVert that DeAndre Hunter is not going to bring is that playmaking for others. Karis has been really, really good at that. But I don't know that you needed both him and Ty Jerome in a postseason rotation. Now I just think that the roster makes more sense.
Yeah, and the roster, I mean, honestly, one of the things I was going to bring up, this roster construction. Like, it's again, we all had questions about Mobley and Allen, whether it was going to work or this or that. But, like, this roster is just, they're together. They like each other. They're a really close-knit locker room. And they have almost everything. They have guys that should be all NBA defense. They have 3-point shooters. They've got scorers. They've got playmakers. They've got rotation guys. Like, just a lot of boxes. We got a long way to go, but as far as the championship team goes, there's a lot of boxes checked off for this team, and it's a lot of fun. Like, I'm so thankful for the Cavs, like, being back, and it's just like, again, we just get so drugged down by some of the other teams in this town. Like, every game, I am thoroughly excited to sit down and watch the Cavs play. Like, it's just so much fun. There's some that are bigger than others, but it's like you sit down every night that they play, and you're just so excited to watch, and it's awesome. And it's kind of sad in a way that we're already halfway over, but we're gonna more right, yeah, and then we're gonna sneeze, and the playoffs are gonna be here. It's gonna be great.
Right. I think without a doubt, this has been the most fun regular season that the Cavs have had since 2008, 2009, the year they won 66 games, and there wasn't really pressure about LeBron leaving yet. Because, of course, they won 60 games the next year, but just didn't quite feel the same. And then when LeBron came back, it was very much just let's get to the postseason and see what happens. And this year has not been about that. And I think that's been a really, really cool thing to see because this team has embraced it. They've embraced wanting to get better, but they've also embraced winning at a pretty high clip so far this season. But Matt, thanks so much for doing this, man. Very much appreciate the time. Everyone, make sure you go check him out. ESPN Radio, his show on Big Play, and I'm sure he's got some other great stuff coming down the line. Matt, thanks so much, man.
I appreciate you, man.
And thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. Spencer Davies is going to be joining me tomorrow. We're going to look ahead to the things that we're looking to see from this Cavs team before the postseason arrives because there are still 28 games left for this team to play. We'll see what happens, but I will be back tomorrow, and then we're almost back to basketball after that.